Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is chaos and beauty. This sort of another version of the yin and yang of cosmic energy and the dynamics of the universe. Anyway, it should be a very interesting conversation. And good morning, Rosalind. Welcome. So good to have you joining us this morning, and welcome to everybody else who's joining us. We're talking about chaos and beauty today. And before we get started, let's just take a couple minutes to get present. So let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, negativity, stress. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light, lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, energizing all your cells, all your molecules, your electrons, creating this brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together. Vigorously rub your hands together to feel all those sensations, the tickling, the tingling, the pressure, the tension, the motion, the friction, all of those sensations, and allow them to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables you to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So, I have been sitting for a while with this concept of chaos and beauty that was introduced to me by a dear friend who is Navajo, and this comes from her tradition, and that life is a dynamic balance between chaos and beauty. And when I was first introduced to it, it was very unfamiliar. I wasn't really able to presence myself to it fully. Like I didn't get it. It took a while, and it's still, I feel like it's still reaching more deeply into my cells and my bones. And as I have a deepening relationship with that concept, I'm finding it profoundly enriching and deepening and expansive, all of those things. And particularly, I think, because beauty is one of my very highest values. I've spoken with you before. Just for me anyway, beauty is a pathway into the divine, into feeling gratitude, into finding presence. And so beauty for me is the door opener into this higher frequency of being, greater sense of presence and expansion and potential, all of those things. And chaos is, for me, and I'm speaking specifically for me because I don't know that you'll experience these things in the same way, but just I invite you to feel into this notion of chaos and beauty. In itself, it's beautiful. And so chaos is this disorder, disruption, discordance, at least and I'm not saying that this is truth. This is out of my understanding, and I don't even know if it's in alignment or how deeply in alignment it is with the tradition from which it comes, from where I was introduced to it. But it's interesting to me that, when we think of, good morning, Bernadette, welcome. So good to have you joining us. We're talking about chaos and beauty. And it's kind of the yin and yang in my understanding. Again, I'm not saying that this is accurate to the tradition, but as I've been sitting with it, this is what's emerging for me. And so with the yin and yang is actually, we see it as this black and white 2D graphic. But I have this wonderful sculpture that is a yin and yang, but it's 3-dimensional. And when it spins, you can see the one converting into the other. And if we look at chaos and beauty, if we look at the notion or the dynamics of change, there's change by its nature, in its essential performance, is creating disruption, right? There has to be disruption for something new to emerge, right? So there's disruption and emergence. There's and disruption, coherence, and discordance and harmony. These things are evolving into each other. One feeds the other in this sort of in a continuous cycle of dynamic interplay. And I was having the conversation around around chaos and beauty with folks in my coaching cohort yesterday. And we were looking at places in our lives where we experience chaos, and places in our lives where we experience beauty. And Bernadette says, out of the ashes of chaos comes the beauty of change. I love that, Bernadette. That's poetry. Thank you. Beautiful. And chaos is the place of emergence for beauty, right? Or for this coherence, this sense of harmony and balance. And we were looking at the times in life, like where chaos occurs, where beauty occurs. And pretty consistently, beauty occurred for people, like the coherence of beauty, the presence, the actual coherent presence of self occurred typically or most readily in spaces of nature, like in connection with nature, sitting with a tree, being with the elements, being present to nature. And that beauty, that there's an innate coherence that communicates to us in a visceral way, in a bodily way that shifts our being. And along with that, of course, is the breath, that by slowing down, that was another consistent theme, by slowing down and taking a breath, allowing your breaths to slow, that act in and of itself calms the chaos, and bringing ourselves into presence calms the chaos. And there could be all this chaos going on around you, but finding that alignment in self, finding that place of presence through breath, through attention, through focus, allows for the reduction of that chaos. And one of the people brought up the notion of controlled chaos or managed chaos. which is a really, really interesting concept, because what would that be? That would be sort of this balance of beauty and chaos, where there's a directed chaos that's directed toward creating greater coherence. So a directed deconstruction, which creates its own chaos that allows for the emergence of something new, of a new idea, a new concept. And in that that dynamic, what's necessary first is to start disrupting the old, and it can be done in an ordered way, in a managed way, such that the chaos that emerges is productive chaos rather than purely disruptive, destructive chaos. Well, Elaine, welcome back. It's been quite a minute. Great to have you here with us. Welcome. And we're talking about beauty and chaos and beauty. And it's not that one is good and one is bad. That's not the idea here. It's that with yin and yang, same thing. You need both. This is a dynamic. It's a dynamic of evolving worlds, right? Chaos and beauty. It's the syncopated rhythm of the universe. And so there are times when the chaos becomes overwhelming and can be very destructive and disempowering. And so where this conversation and the experience of this deepened for me was in the contrast of conversations that I had with a couple different people. One happened to be about all kinds of conspiracy theory sorts of things. And I've thought about that a lot. What I noticed in that conversation is that my energy, like I could feel in my own being and body, the energy of just like this static, chaotic, disordered energy that was very indicative of having lost any center, losing the balance of being present to myself, present to any kind of compass that I might have within myself. And what I noticed about it was what I call handicapping, that choosing to go, there was no answer. What this whole rabbit hole was designed, I think, to create was uncertainty and disorientation and doubt, and feeling helpless and hopeless and overwhelmed and dominated and controlled, and all these energies that are kind of lower frequency type energies that were chaotic, right? And if we talk about frequency, the frequency of that was it was like very, very low frequency. It's not like there's any resolution. It's not like there's any final truth to be discovered. It's not like in any way elevating a frequency. And that in contrast to another conversation that I had, and I've already spoken about that this week, both of these, which was about elevating our awareness, finding a reconciling force or a reconciling notion, idea, perspective that brings together that unifies polarities rather than perpetuating them and deepening these rifts and deepening the separation, creating a greater sense of wholeness and unity and oneness. And the contrast was so stark within my own physical experience, in aligning and recognizing what was going on within my own energetic body, within my own being, like even so far as feeling almost nauseous with the conversation of chaos. Kimberly, welcome. It's been so long. Welcome. It's great to have you back. We're talking about beauty and chaos today as sort of a dynamic of the universe, another way of expressing or looking at this notion of the wheels of the universe, from yin and yang and all of that. So recognizing that these in order to initiate change, we do need to disrupt things. We need to deconstruct things that have been deeply entrenched and solidified or calcified within our beliefs, within our being, within our physical bodies even. And we get to, in that disruption, find a new order, find a new sense of balance and orientation. And so it's not that beauty is better than chaos or chaos is better than beauty. It's that we need both. And I tend to want to skew toward the beauty side, you know, like that there's bliss there, you know, that's the gateway for me to experiencing the divine, to experiencing some level of bliss and awe and wonder. Awe is like one of my, awe and wonder are favorite states of being, you know, to be in the presence or present to the magic of our being. And so I invite you to look at I have this premise, and you can test it out and see if it's so in your world or not, but that our culture is a culture that breeds chaos in a very deliberate way. You know, with the news is pretty much the bad news rather than the good news, right? And you know, we may or may not listen to the news to be informed about what's happening in the world, but the thing is that news, whatever channel we're looking at it from, that news is skewing and conditioning our perception of the world. It's creating a lens, or it's amplifying a lens through which we look at the world. And so typically the news is sensationalist and negative. And what does that do? It creates this sense of chaos, this deepening sense of overwhelm, and it contributes to a sense of hopelessness and powerlessness in so many ways. Where we feel like, you know, the world is going to hell in a handbasket and there's nothing we can do about it. And it's disempowering. That's where the energy of chaos, if we allow ourselves to be stuck in that rather than motivated by that, we can be handicapped, we can be crippled by it. And it is a tool of power and domination. I think that yes, we need chaos in motivating change, and it can be used very strategically to disempower and to control. Because when we relinquish our power, when we relinquish our presence, our alignment, then we become susceptible to this great manipulation that keeps us disempowered. And so the being in a presence of beauty, being and not just physical beauty, that's not what this notion of beauty speaks to. In the presence of coherence, alignment, there is a greater empowerment, there's a greater sense of possibility, there's a greater sense of potentials to express. And the invitation here is to wake up to where we're choosing to put our energies and attentions, to consciously and deliberately wake up to where we're putting our attentions and energies. Because our frequency, the way that our energy, the way that we're relating is impacting the world. You know, if, and this is a big assumption, but it's an assumption that I'm testing, and it's, for me, it seems to bear some truth, is that we are energetic beings. And as such, we're all interconnected. We're all in this big field of energy all the time, moving everywhere all the time and interfacing. And our frequency has an impact on the frequency of the whole. It's kind of the same idea as the butterfly effect, where the flapping of a butterfly's wings here could be creating a tsunami way over there, kind of thing. And so as we are more present to managing our own energies in a more deliberate and conscious way, we can choose where to put our attention. We do not have an obligation and responsibility to go down the dark rabbit holes that so many people indulge in. You know, and I have been in places in my life where it felt like the world was coming to an end. Certainly it felt like my world was coming to an end, and I projected that outward. And we do not have an obligation to go there with people. I think that we have a greater potential to, rather than going down into the ditches, to elevate others. And by managing our own frequency, by intending and directing our own energy, we have the capacity to be elevating the field. And so for me, like, of all the commitments that I have for my life, my intention is to elevate the consciousness of the planet. Now, obviously, I'm not going to do that single-handedly, but where I can begin with that is with myself, is if I can elevate my frequency. If when my frequency goes down, that I find ways to elevate that, to transform and transmute that is a contribution to the whole. And that if we allow ourselves to make that choice, to recognize that our energy impacts the energy of the whole, even in minute ways, in ways that we may never ever see. then it might empower us to choose differently. When we see ourselves going down into the darkness, it's not to pretend that the darkness doesn't exist, and not to recognize that we need healing on different levels. I'm not looking at, I'm not in any way advocating spiritual bypassing, to just say, to paint rainbows on something deep and dark. That's not what I'm advocating here. We get to go through our shadow, we get to experience our darkness, and we get to transmute that rather than live there, rather than propagate it, rather than cultivate it. We get to experience it as a means of healing it. And that's obviously, it's not the only way, and we need all of it. I'm just talking about my choices. Kimberly says, I'm with you. Let your love light shine out in everything we do. Go out and spread love and kindness. And Kimberly, thank you for that. And it's our own reward too. As we do that, it feeds back to us, right? And what happens is that that projection, that expression draws that back, and we get to experience that back. So, yeah, I think that might be it for this morning. But chaos and beauty, beauty and chaos. And I invite you to just sort of entertain that representation of the dynamic of the universe, and notice what unfolds for you. There's a richness to it that just keeps expanding in my exploration of it. And I am guessing that you might have a similar expansion around it if you were to consider it for yourselves. Rosalind and Kimberly and everybody else, it's such a pleasure, really, truly pleasure and privilege to be here with you and to be sharing these thoughts together. And I'm so grateful to you. So that's it for this morning. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. And I go live here each weekday morning on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel at 9 a.m. Eastern. And I invite you to check out the other